first pinball machine back in 1967. So it does happen, and I had to figure out a lot of stuff on my own. And there was no pinball community of any kind back then, so we're a lot luckier now. I met Bob Thurman a long time ago, probably at a Pinball Expo, and then he was around for the New England Pin Fest that we used to do in the early 90s, and never got up front and giving a presentation at a pinball show, even though that's the kind of thing that he does. He's familiar with being behind a microphone, and so we finally got him to talk about pinball. So Dr. Pinball, there's a lot of Dr. Pinballs at the show today, I think, but one of the Dr. Pinballs from Long Island, Bob Thurman.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Good afternoon, everyone. If you could please do that, I'd appreciate it. Well, once again, thank you very much, Dave. In fact, Dave Marston has definitely been instrumental the last couple of months to assist me in preparing this presentation for you. Presentation in about 45 minutes with 15 minutes question and answers afterwards. So if you kindly hold your questions till the end, I'd appreciate it. Well, this is my inaugural seminar. Although, thankfully, having a background briefly of being an actor on stage in the 1980s and community theater for 6 years definitely helped. Definitely helped that I graduated from Connecticut School of Broadcasting in '93, thus the radio-style voice, as well as over 40 years fixing pinball machines, mostly electromechanicals, but I do solid states as well. So anyway, this hopefully will be an informative seminar for all of you, especially those who are new to the world of pinball. Title, A to F, not Z. If we were covering A to Z, I would be here until next year. But A to F, we'll get to one of our slides later that will explain what A to F is. In any case, this seminar, as it says, is primarily for those who are new to the world of pinball. You may have never owned a game, or you are thinking about getting a game. You're talking with our vendors about possibly buying a game, but you've never owned one just yet. Or in fact, there are a lot of people here in our audience that are currently pinball owners, but for whatever reason you had problems with some of your games, and perhaps I can shed some light on that and help you out with those. And again, folks, we're talking the real deal here. We're not talking about that little toy pinball you got from Toys R Us.
Which is out of business now.
Which is going under right now as we speak. And very simply, we're talking about, obviously, as we have here, the 250-pound monsters, full-size, coin-operated games you played in bowling alleys, the arcades, the amusement parks, and who knows where else. And hopefully you had a great time doing so. I certainly have. Now, you may be wondering, who the heck is this guy, Dr. Pinball Bob Thurman? Who the heck does he think he is? Is he perhaps Tommy, the deaf, dumb, and blind kid from the movie? Nah. Elton John? No, not really. Gene Simmons from the rock group Kiss? Guys, I don't have a 7-inch tongue like him. Indiana Jones? Well, we both have an adventuresome spirit in us, let me tell you right now. But unlike Jones, I do touch anything. Or maybe this guy in black. Bad microphone. Anyway, bad case of asthma. Or perhaps the furry guy down at the end. What's that, Doc? I thought it was pretty good. Very good. No. Actually, really, he's just really a guy who is a true star. That's a Stern Stars. A grand guy, Williams Grand Prix. Or a man of all dimensions. That's a godly dimension I'm moving. That was a tough move up all those steps, too. No, really. He's just a guy that loves talking pinball, fixing pinball, and going to first-rate quality shows like Pintastic New England. This is our 4th year in a row, 4th annual show. And from 2015, the very first show, when I first came up here, naturally, you don't know what to expect, and first-time show, you can't be sure what's going to happen. I come in here, I am thoroughly impressed, and I'm still impressed. This is a first-rate show, folks, and I'm serious about that. These folks have worked very hard, tons of planning, great location, okay, and just a lot of fun machines to play, and a lot of things to do. As for me, yes, I've had a 40-year love affair with this little guy. Very briefly, the year is 1969. I'm 10 years old. Palisades Amusement Park. Anybody go to Palisades Amusement Park in New Jersey? Great, great. Well, there was a game room underneath the roller coaster. Guess what's in that game room? You got it. It's called pinball machines. It started there for me and progressed. Our family lived in Fairfield County, Connecticut. And so naturally, during my early teens, I got damn good at playing the game. But at an early age, I also smartly realized, realistically, I couldn't earn a living winning money from pinball tournaments. But fixing them? First machine, a Williams Stratoflag, 1974. I learned a lot from that machine, about electricity and everything else needed to repair that game. Graduated from high school, doing very well. Went to tech college for a year after that, trying to get an electrical engineering degree, but that did not work out. But that same year, somebody from the industry also told me about Cal's Coin College in Oklahoma City, a specialty school specifically to teach you how to fix pinballs, both electromechanical and solid state, because at that time we had a transition of technology of the games themselves. 3 weeks at Cal's Coin College, really smoking. And it's not that the machines were smoking, the instructor was smoking. The worst chain smoker I ever ran into. I and the other 8 students from around the country who were gathered together for 3 weeks had to endure his smoking, but that's the way it was. And then, in the fall of '78, after a couple of months of searching, did land a full-time job working for a street-bound vendor in the marvelous South Bronx of New York City. Anybody who's been to the South Bronx kind of knows it's not exactly the best area of New York. 7 years I'd worked for that guy, and during that entire time, thankfully I was never mugged. I did have my toolbox taken twice. Oh boy, and then because of the video game boom, eventually, unfortunately, like many small-time vending operators, he folded. And I went freelance from that point on. Today, I can boast I have over 400 pinball customers in my database, spreading out from Boston here, all the way to Chicago, to one in Richmond, Virginia, but the vast majority are within my New York City, Long Island area. My first pinball machine, stupidly sold it in 1991. Folks, when you buy your first pinball machine, assuming you develop any kind of attachment toward it, try not to sell it. The last I heard, that machine was somewhere on the West Coast, in Frisco or Arizona. I'd like to get it back, but if I don't, it's no big deal. Currently, well, like anybody else in the business, I've had personal collections ranging from 42 machines to 2, currently 2. A Bally Fireball, and the one you can play right here at the show, 1932 Mills Novelty Company Official. Best conversation starter of the show. Literally, it is the great-great-granddaddy of where pinball originated from, before flippers. Hell, this thing uses no electricity. It literally is as simple as you can get. Some of the places I fixed pins, just briefly highlighting just a couple of them. The Psycho Award. That was very interesting, going into a major psychological hospital in Queens. And it was very interesting having a security guard by my side watching over me, because we have these interesting psycho patients walking around and fascinatingly watching me open up a Williams jackpot to fix it. And also, in the meantime, Howard Stern. I've had the privilege of a couple of celebrities' houses, being in there to fix their pinballs. Howard Stern with a Williams Firepower. That was 1980, before he really kind of hit it big with his career. And finally, perhaps most very satisfying, a production of Tommy by a local theater group. Most theater groups will just put together in the props department some crates and whatnot and simulate a pinball machine for the sake of the weight. Not this group. They were using 2 real pins, Williams Triple Action and another Williams game from the time period. And I was assigned, basically, and again, it was word of mouth reputation that got me in there, to basically watch over the pins, keep them fixed, keep them working through the entire rehearsal period, assisting the stage hands in moving the pinballs between scenes. And I was there for the entire run of the show, all 9 shows as well. And of course, I've been in all kinds of houses today. As the market began to gravitate toward home sales in the 1980s and beyond, pinballs in private homes. I've been in all kinds of them, folks. Specifically, one of the most memorable places is a mansion in the Hamptons in Long Island by a very prestigious attorney who I will not name. I've had the privilege of being into his estate 4 times over the last 20 years. In his 4-acre estate, he built his own in-ground swimming pool and also built a beach house next to the swimming pool. Guess what's in the swimming pool? Good old Captain Fantastic, one of my favorite games. And it's been very nice when some nice scantily-clad lady comes out of that swimming pool to watch me fix the pinballs. So that was a lot of fun. And a New Jersey nudist resort, a couple of electromechanicals, that was 1979 in New Jersey, that was interesting. And a high-class swingers place in Midtown Manhattan. I'm talking a prestigious club, okay, with a bouncer and all kinds of things. The point is, the Space Invaders pinball was in the front lobby. All the action was behind closed doors in the back, so there was really nothing to get too excited about there. But that was an interesting service call that my boss sent me on back in 1980. Now we get to the crux of it, folks. Why get a pinball machine? Why should I get a pinball machine? We got too much furniture in the house already. No problem. First of all, folks, as we all know, it's fun. It's simply fun. It's a very unique form of entertainment. Self-involved entertainment. Human versus machine. Eventually, we know the machine eventually wins. But you can do damn good at times. And the point is, playing skills, folks. Hand-eye coordination. Okay? A machine in your own home, you don't have to put coins in it. It relieves stress also. Come home from a hard day at the office, okay? You want to get at that machine, and then you feel a little better afterwards, even if you don't score many points. It saves relationships too, same reason. And you can become more popular if you hold a lot of parties in your house. I'm sure some of you may be considering that factor. If you like to hold parties in your house, what better unique thing to have for people to have fun on, okay? Or perhaps you simply want to learn how they work and you want to be able to relax at home, take your time, dig inside the machine, and just see what makes it tick. More reasons. Well, many reasons, like there's different themes, the action, the sounds, features, and most important of all, for most of us, reliving our childhood memories. Those memories that, come back to flood you, especially if here at the show you encounter one of your favorite games or a game you grew up with. And sometimes you're able to get that game for your home. Now, what kind of game should you get? What types? Well, just like cars, there's a game for everybody out there, literally speaking, folks. Very simply, anything that was popular at one time or another, most likely there's a pinball machine that was made for it. And that's still being done today by today's manufacturers. Anything that might generate interest, anything that might develop revenue for the operator, definitely that's a pinball machine the manufacturers will consider either getting a license for or just simply creating on their own from scratch. Playfield features. Well, as you know, there are a ton of different playfield layouts out there, whether it be the bumpers, drop targets, regular targets, rollover lanes, kick-out holes. Manufacturers were constantly redesigning playfields and trying to come up with combinations that would produce hit machines. A lot of times, mediocre success. But we do have a lot of winners out there too. The action, slow or fast? Generally speaking, this is just a general rule of thumb. Games from the 50s and 60s tend to play a lot slower than games from the 70s and beyond. Again, that's a broad interpretation. Simple or complex? This really hits me. Give me something that's simple, ABC, likes the whole vegetable, versus something like Twilight Zone. That to me, forget about it. Unless you want me to change a rubber or a light bulb or something, it's in my opinion, a very complex game to play, and I did not see the Twilight Zone series anyway. But for some people, that's what they want. And today's games, oh buddy, if you want a lot of features and a lot of complexities, trust me, it's out there right now for you. And another factor that can be very important when shopping for a game, do you want something that's standard narrow body or the wide body? So nice to be able to work pictures on the computer, folks. It's also nice to know there's actually something wider than my waistline. Also, there's another mid-sized range of games. This is a pitching bag I own, the Williams Base Hit. I spent 2014, all of 2014 restoring that game. That was a major project, and I'm very happy to say it sits in a Cincinnati home right now. But the size of the cabinet will kind of vary, and there's many other machines where the cabinet size will also vary. And again, if you have doors in your house that may be a bit smaller than the average width, it could be an issue. So you want to try and keep that in mind if you're getting a game that's something other than standard narrow body. Okay? And people, is it just the machine just for you? Or is it you and your wife? And what about the kids? Okay? Assuming your kids do have an interest in pinball at all, and they're not on their virtual reality games all the time, but especially if you hold parties, this is going to be, a lot of people. Will the game generally appeal to a lot of people? Of course, only you can answer that question. Now, the house that it's going into. Okay? Okay, looks like I missed something here with the props, but that's okay. Anyway, the house it's going into, a pinball-friendly house is what we want. Ideally, we have no steps, no narrow or tight doors, adequate room for the machine and people, of course. A minimum 8-foot high ceiling. That is 8 feet, folks. Actually, the reason I bring up ceiling height, because I have walked into some places where, especially in a basement, the ceiling is low, and I cannot raise the playfield all the way up to service the bottom portion of the underside of the playfield. So what I'm saying is that, while there's usually not too much of an issue with the ceiling height, I have raised playfields and scraped the ceiling slightly a bit, to the dismay of the homeowner. So ceiling height actually can be a factor when determining where in the house you want to put your pinball. And of course, adequate lighting. And finally, a good environment. Now, long-term preservation of a pinball machine in a good environment is, obviously, indoors, shielded from the elements. Moderate, comfortable temperatures, moderate humidity, and you maintain these conditions all year round. Pinball machines are made of wood, glass, steel, plastic. We know what happens when wood gets it absorbs moisture, either from humidity in the air, or of course it gets wet. So you want to try and preserve the pinball machine as long as possible, and usually that's not too much of an issue. But if you have hot, humid summers, you want to make sure the air conditioning is working where the game is. No musty basements, no hot attics, and please do remember, most importantly, the two biggest enemies of pinballs are changes in temperature and changes in humidity. Thus, you want to try and keep those two within a fairly narrow range if you can. And of course, the unfriendly pinball house is the opposite of the friendly house. I would not want to bring a pinball machine up all those steps, I'll tell you right now. Two more things. Sound and power. As we focus in on these devices here. First, concerning sound of pinball machines. Well, when it comes to sound, we have two major types. The electromechanical pinballs, as indicated by the 3-bar chime unit, whatever that is. 3-bar chime unit, either you plug the chimes in or you leave them out. They're simply on and off when it comes to the sounds of electromechanicals. Earlier games used simple bells. The point is, if you have a situation where it's late at night, you still want to play the game, but people are sleeping, or the neighbors are sleeping, you can unplug the chimes, unplug the bells, but that's it if you have an electromechanical pin. On the other hand, solid-state games, volume controls, and you can adjust it and fine-tune it up and down as loud or as soft as you want. So I admit that's an advantage that solid-state games have over the electromechanicals. Now, something which is usually not too much of an issue, but I briefly bring it up, voltage. Generally speaking, most, not almost all houses today have the proper 120 volts AC coming from the outlet, and the outlet is properly grounded. And where are our props there with the, those three, thank you. Folks, I gotta emphasize grounding, especially for anything electronic. Of course, we've all seen this in an hardware store, a simple 3-prong plug that's at the end of your line cord. But many times I've walked into games, pulled out the line cord, and this ground pin has been cut off. Again, they're open to all the reasons why, but the bottom line is that you want to make sure that both your outlets and games are properly grounded, because anything electronic can be severely damaged by something called a voltage spike. Again, it's rare. Today's homes are pretty well up to code, as they say, but the point is, you want to make sure that you have 3 prongs on the end of your line cord on the pinball machine. The manufacturers took quite a bit of time and effort to put in ground braiding throughout the machine, but it all comes down to that last ground pin on the plug. All right? And power from the outlet. I had one case over the years, as it says at the bottom of this slide, had a Williams Smart Set, 1969 Smart Set. And it was located in an apartment that apparently had been converted for living space in an industrial building in Brooklyn. And the point is, I had to take a freight elevator to get up to this apartment, believe it or not. And long story short, this guy was having problems not just with his pinball, but with other stuff he had plugged in. He only had 101 volts coming out of the outlet. I told him to call Con Ed. The problem wasn't with the machines. But that's an extreme rare exception, but after 40 years, you get all kinds of things. Let's get to sources for pinballs. Now, 2 main categories, and this is just my personal way of thinking of it. Low risk and high risk. Generally speaking, good sources or low risk sources to get a pinball machine are, well, you're setting one right now, pinball shows. Okay, a wide variety of games to pick from, experienced people that are dedicated like me, and especially unique, one-of-a-kind items that you only see at shows, such as that translate at the bottom. At another show, the guy took on top there the original Gottlieb Raven translite picture and transformed it, as you can see at the bottom. I like that. And there are other low-risk sources, such as pinball vendor stores, arcades, private collections, others in the business, established pinball websites like pinsite.com and mrpinball.com. And this applies to both buyers and people looking to sell a game as well. Now, if you have a game that looks like Hurricane Sandy hit it, I hope you can get that slide, that's a seriously flooded area there, and it's just too far gone, you're thinking of scrapping it, sending it to the pinball graveyard, don't worry folks, that slide I took from like the 1940s, okay? Don't do it. Instead, your pinball machine has usable parts in it, even if it's rusted out or it's pretty much just only good for parts. You still have sources like the New England Arcade Collectors Forum, other pinball retailers, perhaps somebody here at the show, and of course, pinball websites. Today, of course, we have the internet and tons of pinball websites. Back in Dave's time when the guy's first game, that's a different world, obviously. Most machines, no matter how far gone, will still have usable parts. That's a picture from last year's show right here. Now, high-risk sources for buying games, they include all these guys here. Generally speaking, you have a higher risk if you go to Craigslist or eBay or other similar sites selling games, non-pinball websites. You gotta be more cautious. And the reason is a greater potential for problems. Game being sold from a non-industry source. Some guy off the street, game probably not been played in years. The game has not been serviced since the age of the dinosaurs. Those of you who don't know, I owned the Valley 4 million BC for a while. Hell of a game. Hell of a game. Great game. So what does this mean? Well, you could be taking home somebody else's headache. Most of the time, you will be. Even if you don't have to pay anything for the game, you are still going to have cost factors. Getting the thing in your vehicle, transporting it, getting it in your house, or perhaps just storing it somewhere. And then you're going to have a lot of work in storing it most of the time. Again, maybe get lucky and maybe find something in reasonable shape. Maybe it even works. But there's no way to know. And of course, forget about a warranty. And unless you know what you're doing and have the right equipment to move a 250-pound monster, I recommend you get somebody else who's more experienced. Okay? I've moved many a game, sometimes solo. Now it's getting more difficult at my age. Have an mTOR, let the buyer beware. Proceed with caution. Ooh, seeing yellow. And you want to ask yourself those important questions. And remember, folks, very simply, bottom line, when you're shopping for a pinball, it's just like shopping for a car. You got to test drive the thing, you got to look under the hood. Next. Here's where we get to the title of our seminar, Ranges of Game Conditions, A through F, NIB, known as new in the box. That is literally a pinball machine that was briefly tested at the factory, put into its crate, and now it's waiting for a new home. Literally speaking, almost no place, if none at all, brand new. Okay, just like a new car off the cars lot. Excellent, good, fair, poor, and piece of parting out source. Let's keep it clean, Bob. Keep it clean. Next, the most sensitive subject ever invented by human beings. Can anybody guess what that is? Anybody dare take a guess? No. No.
Cost.
Subject.
We gotta dig deep.
Oh, okay. I see. That's not close enough. Money. Subject of money, folks. Definitely. Well, I walked into a house and sure enough, the owner is asking me, Bob, how much is my game worth? Or Bob, how much is this game going to cost me? I get that question all the time. Well, here's your answer, generally speaking. Generally speaking, price ranges for games, and again, this is probably strictly my opinion, though I base it on what I have observed over the many years. As you would expect, the highest prices, new in the box, fully restored, rare, and slow production games, one of a kind, custom, high demand, excellent condition, $3,000 to $15,000 and up, assuming they're fully working. At $50,000, twice in the last couple of months, guys, I've seen on MrPinball.com, I think it was one California guy and one Oregon guy, advertising that price to sell their supposedly mint, one-of-a-kind pinball machines. I forget the names of the games. But that's the rare exception for that level. I saw one guy in Atlanta, Georgia, trying to sell an early 60s Williams game in fair condition for $17,000. I gave him a phone call to kind of correct them, shall we say. Anyway, but again, people don't know. Most people in the street simply just don't know. Then the other end of the spectrum, which thankfully for most of us, is within our reach financially. Again, it may not be mint, maybe good, fair, poor, it may or may not work, but $300 to $3,000 is much more common, you'll happily know. And another factor, I call it the geometry factor. As generally speaking, games in California and the West Coast cost definitely more, or that is the asking prices for those games are definitely more than if you were to buy that game either in the middle of the country or perhaps even here on the East Coast. I think it's the most colorful slide of the presentation. I'm so happy I found that one. Finally, two more factors that can affect the price of a machine. Price guides. We had one here earlier, but anyway. Price guides, again, can be, as it says, just a guide, a range of price for a particular game. And seller motivation, which probably is even more important. That seller comes in and he really wants to get a couple of games sold. So he may be negotiable. If you can negotiate a price, it might be better for you. Before you hand over your money, make sure we have an understanding as to how the machine is going to get from where it is to where you want it in your house. All right? Delivery, setup, adjustments, testing of the machine, and liability. This is a heavy sucker we're talking about. Okay? Is there an additional delivery fee? Okay, if somebody's charging an additional delivery fee, how much is it, and so on. And usually it is worth paying that fee if you cannot move it yourself. Any kind of warranty. Again, generally speaking, established vending companies will offer some kind of warranty, a certain number of days, parts and labor, or just at least labor. And then, of course, for the larger companies, some of them will offer a trade-in maybe down the line, maybe a year or two down the line, or a few years down the line, if for some reason you want to trade it again in for something else. And again, this is all generally speaking, folks. Everybody's different. All vending companies are different. They have their own policies, their own procedures. So again, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, generally speaking. Okay, it will vary from company to company. Other important delivery and setup points. If for some reason your seller's not delivering the game, you want to make sure that you use somebody with experience in the business, or your game may arrive in pieces. Regular moving companies will just basically bring in the game, dump it, and leave. And that's it. They're not going to do the other steps involved to get the game set up and running for you. And also an experienced industry person will take a few extra minutes to show you the details of opening up your game, explain the features, okay, close it up, make sure there's a few extra parts in there, make sure that you basically understand how to get into your game. And also, please, make sure the papers, technical papers for the game are in the cabinet of the machine. Keep the papers for the machine in the machine. Repeat after me, class. Keep the papers for the machine in the machine. You awake out there? Hopefully. You get the idea, folks. It's really frustrating. I walked into a house, there's no papers in the machine. The owner doesn't know where they are. Okay, after the delivery. Dum, 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 dum. After the delivery, it's a few days after the delivery, you come home after a hard day's work. You go to the game room, turn on the remote, and nothing. It won't turn on. What will you do? What will you do? Houston, we got a problem, all right? Well, no problem, no problem. My special assistant will be very happy to fix it for you. Can you guys all see that? Now we get the chuckle. All right. Scrap that joke. Anyway, so really, what should you do? Try and fix it on your own or call somebody in? Well, generally speaking, if you're a novice and you really don't have a background in pinball, that's okay. You still can do a few things, such as make sure it's plugged in. Make sure there's power in your outlet, which most likely there is. Check the line cord. Okay? This is the line cord. This represents a line cord. Make sure the line cord seems to be intact, that nobody stepped on it or something like that. Make sure that it's firmly plugged in. And if those seem to be good, then unplug the machine, open it up, and then check connections, or your Jones plugs, as we call them, electromechanical pins. Make sure your connectors are all firmly pushed in. Somebody can wiggle loose somewhere, sometime. You want to check for any, do a thorough inspection. If there are any broken wires, as you can see. All right, anything that doesn't look right, okay? Anything that may have fallen from the underside of the playfield, like a loose screw, and an electromechanical game falls on switches on one of the relays on the bottom, and who knows what kind of problem that can cause you. And check your fuses. Fuses will generally be in 3 locations: the bottom board, side cabinet, and the underside of the playfield. Okay? Now, if any fuses are blown, check all coils. This is, of course, when the game is unplugged. Check all coils. Now, I don't have a solenoid, well, let's put this. I do have a solenoid coil here. This is one that's good, okay, the wrapper, okay, it's in full color. But if this was brownish or blackish, because it was shorted out, then that would be a different story, and that would pop a fuse. And that's a very common problem if you have a stuck switch on the playfield. And if you feel the problem is beyond what you can do, you've gone through all those checks, but you're still not comfortable and the game's still not working, and the fuse you put in to replace the blown fuse blows, you probably need to call a tech. Okay? Simpler problems like a stuck bulb, burned out bulb, or out of place rubber that came off the post, generally those can be handled by you. Okay, those are simple problems to take care of. And especially, doesn't happen often, but if you hear a strange noise coming out of that game, turn off the machine. Any noise that doesn't sound right, especially electromechanical games, turn off the machine. Okay? Because very simply, that could mean a serious problem will develop shortly if you don't. Again, called a fried solenoid coil and a blown fuse. Same thing if you see smoke coming out of the guy, okay? You see smoke, turn the machine off. And please, folks, do remember, it's not a good idea to toast marshmallows in the smoke. All right, that joke didn't work. Okay. I was going to fry my hot dogs in the smoke, but that's another story. Okay, and when you're searching that bottom cabinet for anything out of the ordinary, what might you find? Well, these are some things I have found over the years. Some memorable, some not so memorable. Bottom right corner, the live cat. Literally speaking, I walk into a mansion in Long Island. This guy just wanted me to evaluate his 2 machines, his 2 use Williams QT and a Gottlieb early digital solid state. Just wanted me to assess them and find out how much they're worth, no problem. I get to the Williams QT and the head is removed from the cabinet. The head's off to the side. Cabinet's staying on its 4 legs, okay? No problem. Open up the door to look inside the cabinet and this Garfield cat jumps out of there. Open up the cabinet. Cat hairs all over the relays. That was interesting. And as I said before, if you've done everything you can to try and fix the game safely, don't be ashamed to call a tech. And if you want to, it's also a good idea to find out what areas of expertise they have, what they charge, and use the word guaranteed. I guarantee my work for at least 30 days. And perhaps I didn't have to go this far, but the honest pinball technician is not ashamed to admit his limitations. I'll tell you right now, guys, EM, send me an EM any day. But solid state, greatly depends on what machine and what kind of problem it has as to whether I will fix it myself or refer the customer to a more qualified person. I'm not ashamed to do that. In fact, I have one other friendly tech on the island who is more than happy to fix solid state games, but he won't touch an EM. So we trade service calls. And there's not a lot of us. I'm talking maybe only 5 or 6 guys in the entire New York City, Long Island region that fix pinballs, period. So there's a very small bunch of us out there. Reputation is everything. Honorable techs will trade service calls with other honorable techs. Now, no wonder my brother likes to get into trouble. Anyway, for the person that does have some experience, and I'm sure it includes a bunch of you right here, depending what kind of problem it is, what machine it is, and depending on your level of experience and knowledge, determines whether you're going to fix it on your own or call the tech. Folks, if you're in doubt, don't be ashamed to call a tech. You don't want to get zapped. And by the way, that brings me to one point. Remember that Swingers Club in Manhattan, that Space Invaders? Zap! I get zapped with 225 volts when I'm readjusting the high voltage on the display board. Not a good feeling. Not a good feeling. You don't want to do that. Of course, I was maybe only 20 years old, I was still learning. Oh, that was a hard lesson. For the novice who wants to learn more, great news for you folks. If you want to just take a few minutes out of your life, a number of excellent sources to learn about pinball machines. This is just a small sampling. Of course, you want to talk with people in the business. The internet. Again, the internet is just an amazing thing that has changed our world so many ways. Good websites, PinWiki, YouTube videos, plenty of those out there. Even good old-fashioned books. I got to read this Hank Jagger book. I never heard of it until last week when Dave told me about it.
I can say briefly, it's like they treat electromechanical system as if it were solid state. So here's the Gottlieb system, here's the Bally system, here's the Williams system. So if you're fixing electromechanical for one of those 3 manufacturers, it goes into much more depth than Russ Jensen's earlier book on electromechanical troubleshooting.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, hopefully sometime I'll be looking into it myself. Great. And of course, factory instruction manuals, schematics, and of course, watching brilliant guys like me do repairs. Definitely. All right. Fixing your own electromechanical game. As that instructor, Cal Clifford, told me years ago, with an electromechanical pinball machine, if you are able to clean and adjust switch contacts, you will solve 90% of your problems with an electromechanical pinball. Whether it's 90% or some other percentage, doesn't matter. Bottom line is, if you can do that, you will be able to self-service a large portion of your problems if you have that kind of game. Games from the 60s, the 70s, and up until 1980, that's when mechanicals were made. From 77 to 80, the changeover took place to solid state. But even with solid state games, you still have switches under the playfield. So if you at least can properly gap those switches and make sure the contacts are clean, that also applies to them as well. And of course, you can have many other issues. A short circuit, solder splashes can be a hell crap to find if they came across switch contacts on the bottom board. Stepping units and so on, things like that, broken wires, loose screws, missing screws, things out of alignment, even ghosts and goblins. Although ghosts and goblins probably apply more to these 2 guys. Godly Haunted House and Allied Leisure's Spooksville. I still enjoyed playing Spooksville when I found one. And fixing your solid state game. Well, solid state games, technically speaking, of course, are a very different animal than electromechanicals. With a solid state game, especially for a lot of old-time operators, they could not handle the changeover because they were so used to fixing their electromechanical games on their own. Anyhow, fixing a solid state game, generally speaking, does require a greater amount of technical knowledge and training versus an EM. Tracing wires with schematics using the DMM, that's my digital multimeter right there. Okay, along with the digital display, one of the early digital displays, folks. That display has long since been replaced by a progressive technology. Cold solder joints can be hell to find, let me tell you right now. Checking your connectors and ribbon cables, etc., testing various solid-state components. Using self-test functions, and basically with today's pinball machines, you've got to have the instruction manual. The darn instruction manual for today's games is probably at least that thick. But hey, that's the way it is. Changing technology, all the time it's happening. So to wrap things up, some of my adventures over the years fixing games or going on service calls, broken glasses. Oh, it's so fun when I took that temper glass out of the got the game. Okay, I was on a concrete floor in the basement, and I carefully laid it down by a wall in the basement, and I'm looking down at a pile of million pieces of glass particles and 2 left in my hands. But the good news was the glass was out of the play field. God forbid you get a broken glass in the play field with 1 million pieces, you have to vacuum out of there. Oh, I've done that 3 or 4 times over the years. Worst case was anybody know how many electromechanical Mataharis were made?
170.
Man is correct, 170. I was lucky enough to pick one up from somebody selling one in my local area maybe 15 years ago. Complete. Well, I put it in self-storage with my other 42 games. Then, for some reason, I was moving games around. The head fell over. Shattered back glass. Do you have any idea how impossible it is to find a replacement back glass for an EM Matahari? Well, sold the game as is. Just another sad story. And of course, as you can see, I've had all kinds of issues and other things, moving games and things like that. Foreign games, they're difficult to work on because the relays and other circuitry is very different. And perhaps the ultimate insult, customers not happy when they get the final bill. However, most of the time, after all said and done, no greater satisfaction than having a machine where the customer says, "Dang, looks like a new machine. I can't believe how great it plays. Oh, all the fantastic action. Hey, the light lights up now." And so on and so on. So folks, in conclusion, if James Bond 007 believes the world is not enough, what makes you think just one pinball is enough? Ah, you gotta get a handful if you want the ultimate variety pack. This top center's photo, that's believed from the 1940s. It's a bingo machine. Very, very, very interesting. But wouldn't you like to have a collection, something like this down here? Talk about walking into paradise. Finally, 6 of my favorite electromechanical games: Atlantis, Captain Pintastic, Top Score, Target Alpha, Superstar, and Suspense. Good action, good features. Atlantis still considered collectible. 6 of my favorite solid state games. Adam's Family, which we have right here at the show. Black Knight, the 1980 Black Knight, the first Black Knight that came out. I was lucky enough to be at the AMOA show in Chicago in 1981, not only to play brand new Black Knight, but to shake the hand of Harry Williams himself, just before he passed on. I was only 19, 20 at the time, but trust me, those 2 things stand out in my head. I was so fortunate to be able to get to have that experience with him. Williams Diner for the sound package. We talked about playing Dynamite tunes. Funhouse. I have conversations with Rudy all the time. Shut up! My name's not Bucko, Rudy! And so on. That's a great game, too. Space Shuttle. Another great game. Oh, Terminator 2. Judgment Day. I have conversations with Arnold, too. Fabulous game. Fast action. Great features. A shotgun feature. Let me tell you, if you haven't not played Terminator 2, one of the top 10 pinballs ever made, period. With that said, questions and answers, that's it. Thank you.
For your questions, come on up here, because we're recording this session, and like all our sessions here, I guess I'm supposed to tell you that Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 220, you're required to be informed that this session is being recorded, so anything you say could be captured here. So if we have any questions, come on up. And we can always talk about things found inside a pinball machine. That's an endless topic. Not just dried out rubbers, but any sort of indication of former residents in the machine. Great, Rich, our next presenter. We have a question.
Yes, I do.
Yes.
So on EM games, there's like a bunch of people that are real experts and they'll clean everything. But like for the novice first buying an EM, they should try and just troubleshoot one little area at a time and not like open up an EM game and start cleaning all the contacts.
Well, no, if they have a particular problem on their game, they can simply go to that area where the problem is. If a number 4 reel is sticking, I would go to that area. You would check your playfield switches. I mean, if you're getting a buzzing sound from somewhere, most likely you got a stuck playfield switch. But no, I would not start cleaning switch contacts and then regapping them unless you have some experience in how to do it correctly. I mean, there are switch contacts that are behind rubbers. You need a certain air gap, okay, depending on the length of the rubber and so on. There are other factors that can determine what is the proper air gap. For example, slingshot switches, okay, with the thick contact points, they should be gapped for a certain amount. On the other hand, you may have just a simple stretch rubber, only maybe a couple inches long. That stand-up switch contact probably should be adjusted a little closer. So I say just go to the problem area. That's it. Don't go through everything at the beginning.
Yeah, just another tip for new people getting into EMs, like what we've run into a lot is the coin mechs are either jammed up or something goes weird on the switches, and that screws up the games.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing is remove the coin mechs and have a look, see if they're jamming up the switches.
Well,
That's your
yeah.
Canadian quarters we're talking about there. That's what's jamming them up.
Yeah, well, obviously, if you have a coin jam, obviously you want to take out the coin mech first, okay, and maybe obviously stuck coins in there, and of course check the coin switches, the blade coin switches are delicate, okay, especially if you got a 1960s game that's taking dimes. When you talk about extreme sensitivity, you got to be very careful and adjust the coin switch properly. Okay, you could possibly either bend it beyond repair or break it or whatever. So you want to just go through all the areas of the front door, the switches as well as the coin mech, and make sure everything's in alignment. And pretty much, that's what you need to do.
Just one final thing. Way back, we used to find like a bunch of electromechanicals, either the operators or the techs were heavy on grease on the reels. And over the years, they'd like dry right out and be like...
Okay, that gets to stuck stepping units and other things like that. Unfortunately, when something was sticking on an electromechanical game from the 60s and or the 70s, a lot of operators that were not thinking long term, they had to do a quick fix. I mean, consider this, you have the game on location, okay? You're losing money every second that game is not working on location. Location owner is bitching and howling because he's losing money too. You need some kind of quick fix. And a lot of times they would use gear oil or motor oil or some kind of oil grease to get a sticking unit to work. And for the time being, it probably did work for a while. But if you're familiar with oils of all kinds, over time, guess what happens? They gum up. Thus, you have, unfortunately, a lot of cases over the years where I got to completely disassemble a stepping unit or some other unit to clean all the surfaces away of the gear oil, get all that gear oil cleaned up, then reassembled, and usually the unit will work okay. It's a bit of a time-consuming process, but I've had to do it many times. There's no other fix. So unfortunately, that's reality, folks.
Yeah, in some of the states, occasionally see the homeowner that's used WD-40 on everything.
Yep. And I don't claim to be a total expert on all chemicals and things like that, but I've heard WD-40 is not a true solvent, quote unquote. Don't use it. Don't use highly flammable liquids on cleaning your switch contacts and then fire the game up. One spark, smoke. But yeah, those are good points, and I've had to repair many a machine of those problems over the years. Okay.
Okay, other questions? Or things you found in the bottom of your pinball machine?
Yeah, I'd like to hear something interesting here.
Yeah. One time I had a really weird problem with the Valley Electromechanical, and finally I just looked across all the relay banks, and somehow there was a leg bolt across all the leaf switches of a relay. So there's
Hey.
all kinds of short circuits that never happened in any other, gapping issue. It was just totally weird. But
So if you were to put together a pinball kind of toolbox when you go on a call, what kind of tools would be in that toolbox?
Oh
great
boy.
question.
Oh, what a question. Well, trying to recall from memory my current pinball toolbox, which I've had for quite a few years. Well, switch blade adjusting tools, switch blade adjusting contacts, a point file, and a little dentist's mirror are some of my primary tools I use to be able to see around switches and get them adjusted. What else? Well, a number of screwdrivers, of course, pliers, wire cutters, solder gun and solder, file, big file for other things.
I'd put in a word for the new LED type lights. You can get LED lights that are very skinny or wide. You can have all kinds of different form factors. So
Yes, and that's true in your
compared to
pinball
traditional
part.
flashlights.
Yeah, and that's in your, not tools, but pinball parts. Okay, I can't carry all kinds of pinball parts, but I try and keep a reasonable number of EM parts with me. Those types of bulbs, as well as a bag of pinball rubbers, back to the toolbox, hammer, vice grips to remove leg levers that are rusted beyond belief, nut drivers, especially those to again put leg bolts and head bolts on games. Oh boy, a bulb removal tool, which one gentleman was selling one that was better grade, plastic tubing attached to a wood dowel. And of course, there's other stuff, things like that, other supplies, wire ties, and so on and so forth. I mean, I'd have a laundry list, seems like a mile long just to provide you that. DMM, digital multimeter, of course, for testing. Miles of wire, various colors, and so on and so forth. Blood jack connectors. Again, there's a whole bunch of stuff that to verbally spew it out probably would take me at least a half an hour. That's a good sampling of what I carry, and no doubt there are other pinball mechanics out there that make my toolbox look average versus what they have in theirs. But I do the best I can to handle most any service calls. And of course, you cannot carry every single part for every single game. Insane. But if you know where to get the parts, or your pinball websites, or your contacts, okay, or you see an ad and you try and stock up on basic parts, but the point is, you do the best you can. And I've been pretty fortunate to avoid a second visit to a game that I did not have a part for in the first call. That's pretty much how I handle that. Thank you.
Other people? One thing, there's some operators in New England who spend lavishly on buying new machines, which of course the factories appreciate, and they have a staff of dozens of people, and not one person working for that whole firm has 11. So then they, the guy who's the interface to the distributor says, well, we're going to cut back on our pinballs. Pinballs don't make any money for us. Yeah, right. Giving the player a good playing experience. So even though it's not actually under the topic of repair, under the heading of playfield configuration and enjoyment of the game, setting it up properly, a nice 2-foot level is a good one to have, plus a small one. You and set right on the wood of the playfield. Have a couple levels, plus an inclinometer if you like to be careful about setting the slope of the playfield.
No matter what you bring, the one tool you need will not be in your box.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Or the part.
Yeah, that can certainly happen. It's especially tough when pretty much a one-of-a-kind custom part made for one specific game breaks or wears out. One thing I did not mention is that having to, that's a key word, modify certain parts, or perhaps use another manufacturer's parts to fix a different manufacturer's game. Sometimes you can get by doing that. Sometimes you can't. That could be a great challenge. Or more than likely, in the case of, say, that chime unit, that Williams chime unit right there. Generally speaking, I've had to use different or other than factory parts to get it repaired. And in one case with a Bally chime unit, I actually found something in Home Depot that can actually replace the worn out grommets on top because of that design, and those devices, and I forget what they were called, worked out perfectly. Sometimes you just get lucky in finding a part that you need or something that will get the job done. Or you can do a temporary repair on the playfield so the ball doesn't get stuck in a certain area because you don't have that particular item. And as I say, it's a never-ending learning experience, folks. Since 1975, I've been very, very fortunate to, before that actually, been involved with the world of steel ball. It's been a big adventure and it will continue to be a big adventure. I can tell you right now that the silver ball is in my blood. Pinball is in my blood. On a personal note, it would be nice if I had a nice lady in my life that also shared my fondness for the silver ball, but that's another story for another day. In any case, though, I very much enjoy coming to these shows. It literally is a break from my full-time job. Briefly, since we have a couple of minutes left. I've done many other things in my life. So one of the more amazing things I've done with my life besides fixing pinball machines. Well, I've been involved with multi-level marketing. Didn't work out. Involved with online things. Didn't work out. I've been a stockbroker on Wall Street for a couple of years, 1990 to 91. I decided that career was not for me. Definitely not for me. And the most unbelievably, and I have the proof right here in my pocket, this is an employee pass to the New York City subway system. 17 years I've been with the Transit Authority in New York City. For the first 7 years, I drove New York City subway trains down the rails. That was an experience. You might say I was really going places there. But got demoted, and now I work in the stations department for the last 10 years. Look forward to retiring in 3 years. It is not fun working for the military, I tell you right now. And let's see. Well, those are kind of two highlights. As I said before, I've been very happy to be an actor on stage for 6 years during the 1980s. Maybe in a few years I'll get involved with another theater show, I don't know. Been lucky to inherit my father's bass baritone singing voice, which I may use again on stage, who knows.
After we buy a new PA system.
Exactly. But I've done some very impressive things over the years, and but the silver ball is still primary in my life, really is. I had 42 pinball machines up until 2007. For personal reasons I won't get into, I had to sell the entire collection. I think all but one was electromechanical. Some of them are in Asbury Park, New Jersey. You can play some 60s Gottliebs of mine I used to own at Asbury Park's Silver Ball Amusements Arcade, which thankfully, amazingly, I was told, was not devastated by Sandy. And of course, I've owned and sold numerous games over the years, done a lot of things, but especially interacting with a lot of good old faces at the pinball shows, whether it be here, Pennsylvania shows, Pinball Expo in Chicago in the fall. Pretty much I get to these pinball shows because they are my break from my full-time job, and I badly need those breaks, I'll tell you right now. And as I say, this is my first inaugural seminar here at Pintastic. Not perfect, and some last-minute glitches, which I push aside and just push on. In any case, Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully I informed you a little bit. You're always welcome to call me. I'm here to talk to me at the shop. Wake up. And I'm here until Saturday night. And yes, I do travel to pinball service calls. Again, it's a little more pricey for me to service somebody outside the Long Island area, but depending on the game, I kind of feel most comfortable in front of an EM, bringing it back to life and saying, hey, factory fresh. With that said, showtime is over. Thank you.